Hello, everybody. How you guys doing today? I have another episode of Connecting the Dots. This is Stroke Awareness Month in the United States. Basically, in the month of May, we talk about stroke awareness, stroke prevention, and also aftercare. I have come together with different professionals and also different stroke survivors to talk about the aftercare part. You know, after we leave the hospital, a lot of times our care goes down because our caregiver doesn't understand what's the next step, or our insurance runs out and we're just stuck out there. So I have the pleasure of having a couple of medical professionals to help us out to answer those questions, to help us guide us through. So without any further ado, let me introduce the people I have on my panel today. The first I have is Brian Smith. He's out of Atlanta. He is a physical therapist. He's going to help us out with our questions we have. And I have Dominique. I can't say your last name, Dominique. You have a very long, exotic last name, but she's a stroke survivor. She lives in Australia. So I had her on another show before, and she was graceful enough to come back with us. Hello, Dominique. How you doing today?
I'm good.
Cool. All right. So let's get down to the brass tacks. Physical therapy. Brian, what is physical therapy, and why does a stroke survivor need to have physical therapy?
All right, so as physical therapists, we are movement experts that evaluate and treat people with any type of movement disorder, whether it's come on from an injury, like a sports injury, a disease process, or in this case, like a stroke. So as you know, many people after a stroke have difficulty with movement. So as a physical therapist, we are helping them all the way through that process, from movements of getting out of bed, learning to balance, learning to walk, kind of getting back to all of those activities they were doing before the stroke.
The question I have for you, I want you a little bit drill down further, because for me, when I heard about physical therapy, when I had my stroke, only thing I thought about is they helped me out with my legs. You know, is that the misconception of it, or is it more than that?
So as physical therapists, we are trained to treat the whole body. Oftentimes in a rehab setting, we work closely with occupational therapists, speech therapists. We work with that full team. So sometimes we delineate kind of who's focusing on what. So I think oftentimes in a stroke setting, because of that, it feels like the physical therapists are the leg people. Right, but really we're working on trunk, we're working on core, we're working on cardiovascular health, endurance. We're working on brain health, again, through endurance, preventing future strokes through exercise, through healthy lifestyles. So yeah, I think sometimes it's easy to peg PT as the leg people, but really we are kind of focusing on the whole thing.
Okay. Dominique, so is that the same type of concept that you guys have out of Australia? Did you think of this leg people, or do they work with your whole body as well?
For me, personally, I see a sports physiologist. For me, the person I see actually focuses on full body. When I first was going to see her, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. And when I was going to see her as well, I was also suffering really badly with my dystonia as well. So if you would see like my previous like workout videos, I used to be in like a neck brace and that, because like I couldn't really handle any of like my upper body, and like every time I'd work out, it would trigger all my upper body to like contort my dystonia as well. So when with her, like she actually focuses really like well on like the whole body, and she I think it's with like all the physios that are here in Australia. I did struggle though when I actually first had my first kind of like stroke. I ended up going to the outbase unit at one of the hospitals, and I would actually say the care there was not good. I do not the care that I got there was not good. They kicked me out of the care there because I didn't get better within like their amounts of time that they expected me to get better in. So for that, they were just like, okay, you didn't get better, so they like just pushed me on. Whereas the person that I'm working with now, she's like really in depth, and like the trainer I have is like making sure that before I worked, like ended up going on to like the more physical training that I'm doing now. She did all the neurological based training to help like get all the neurological stroke sensory stuff getting worked on first. So she worked from all the upper body and make sure all like the neurological parts were worked on first. So I think that if you have like help, like funding, I think it's better. But unfortunately, if you don't have that funding, I don't believe you get the same amounts of help.
So Brian, that's an interesting thing that Dominique was basically saying, is like she went to one place and they're not that good, or if you don't have the funding, better luck next time. You know, is that something that you actually go through a lot, that you see with a lot of patients and they get discouraged? Your microphone is off. There you go.
Yeah, my dog was barking, had to turn it off for a minute.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, in a perfect world, funding would not be an issue, right? We'd be able to treat everybody until they got better. In this imperfect world we live in, insurance is a factor that we have to, you know, pay attention to.
Right.
But I think long term, we need to be able to be teaching our patients how they can be taking it upon themselves and implementing the things that we've been doing, so we can really maximize the recovery in this world of insurance and limited benefits that people have. So I can see how that would be frustrating, Dominique.
Yeah.
But that is something that some patients run into, yes.
So I'm gonna get back to you on that, but Dominique, I want you to explain to Brian and also to our community what actually happened to you, because you look like a very young woman, and a lot of people say young people don't get strokes, and that's a very big misconception. Can you tell us your backstory real quick?
So for me, I ended up getting like what they call, I first ended up with this silent migraine. And for me, like it was like, I didn't have like any pain, but I ended up with getting all paralysis down my face and slurred speech and everything. And I had my first one when I was 25. And then they just were like, oh, it's just a silent migraine, don't worry about it, don't think anything of it. So I went into hospital, got pumped with fluids, and they sent me home once the paralysis went away. But that one, the paralysis went away. And then a few months later, I ended up having another one. And then it was actually what they call a hemiplegic migraine. And I ended up with full paralysis down the left side of my body. And that ended up after because I have dystonia, and they treat dystonia with Botox injections. And because I was getting Botox, hemiplegic migraines, but I was also getting dystonic migraines as well. They decided to treat my dystonic migraines with the Botox, but they gave me about 100 units of Botox to treat the dystonia with. And they put it all through your forehead, all down your head, down your shoulders, and into like down your neck and into your shoulders. And about 3 weeks later, I reacted badly to it, had my massive hemiplegic migraine, where I ended up, unfortunately, I was actually in the emergency department getting results for another problem. But I ended up having like full paralysis down the left side of my body, and I fell to the ground, but I ended up with a burning sensation down the right side of my body. And I was like on fire on one side and paralyzed down the other, and in extreme pain, and my whole neck pulled to the left side, and I couldn't talk. And they weren't sure what was happening. And I ended up with the deficit down the left side of my body. They tested me for the familiar hemiplegic migraine gene, and I came back with this gene where I'm only number 2 in the world to have, and all they know is it's damaging and disease causing, and that's all they know. And then 2 years ago, I ended up with 3 of those hemiplegic migraine genes, and because hemiplegic migraines, and because I carry that gene, mine are like strokes because they don't release. Mine don't release, and because I had 3 of them, the first one just paralyzed me from the waist down. The second one ended up paralyzing me from the shoulders down, and then the third one took away my whole speech. So yeah, so I was trapped like that, and because like a lot of the doctors here don't understand like any of my health problems and that, there was nothing they could do for me. So I was just kind of trapped like that for a while, and then I kept having 3 to 4 of those hemiplegic migraines every week, and so I was left with paralysis down the left side of my body and the waist down for 6 months. And yeah, so I learned to do everything with one hand, and I learned to wheel around the house with one hand in a wheelchair and get myself dressed and cook and everything. But I messed up my speech really badly. I had like thick tongue speech, so I couldn't talk. And yeah, so I met a Chinese man who does skull acupuncture, and he tries to help paralyzed people walk. And I'm very grateful because on the 3rd treatment with him tweaking needles in my head, I got like little sensation and then electric currents like shooting through my legs, and I was like, oh my God. So ever since then, and like it's been over a year now with him, I've finally been able to get like the movements and that back in my legs. But I had another hemiplegic migraine 2 weeks ago, so that was my first setback.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Brian, Dominique says she's like number 2 in the world to actually have this type of situation. And I can imagine hearing all this stuff, you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot. Like when you get things like that, and I heard you say that you deal with, you know, like almost a psyche as well, getting our minds right to deal with things like that, you know, is that something that you'll be dealing with her with? Because she was in a paralyzed state. Would she still go to physical therapy? Would you still be dealing with her, or that's something totally outside of your wheelhouse?
No, I think that would be something that could come through physical therapy. Definitely like the team approach. We'd have counselors and kind of working with the psyche that you mentioned. But yeah, any type of movement, you know, working on that paralysis, learning to get around the house again on your own, learning to get out of bed on your own, learning to get dressed, to cook, all of that falls under physical therapy, occupational therapy. So kind of trying to get that team approach to get you to where you are again now, and hopefully continuing to progress. Okay. Absolutely. All of those obstacles that Dominique mentioned, those are the things that physical therapists are trying to help people through.
So let me ask you, with that, keeping that in mind, Brian, you know, for a person like myself or Dominique, if looking for a physical therapist, what are the type of questions we should ask a person in that field so they could be the right person for us?
Yeah, so there are physical therapists that treat in all different sorts of different realms, right? Everything from school systems, sports clinics, sports teams, hospitals. So following a stroke, following these migraine, hemiplegic migraines that you're talking about, really the type of therapy that I specialize in is neurological. I'm a neurological clinical specialist, so specializing in the nervous system, specializing in the brain, in the nerves. So for somebody who's had a stroke, if they've gone through the hospital, hopefully the case managers, people at the hospital would kind of help direct them to that correct level of physical therapy.
So what if, like Dominique was saying, that, you know, some places she went to outpatient therapy and it was terrible. You know, what are the things that we can do to this? Okay, I need this to stop and I need to go somewhere else. What are the things that we need to know as the triggers are saying, it's time to move on from you guys?
I think if you feel like you don't have that good rapport with that physical therapist, if the things that they're asking you to do don't really don't feel right to you, I think if the internet's a wonderful thing, right? Patients can get great information, and I don't think patients should be afraid to get some information on their own, right? And have those discussions with the therapist. I wouldn't trust everything you read on the internet, right? Don't go to your therapist, don't go to your doctor and say, well, I read this on the internet, it's got to be this way. But if they can't explain kind of what they're asking you to do, or why it's going to make you better, if they don't have that background in neurology, then maybe they aren't the right therapist for you, right? They could be great therapists, but if they don't have the background in stroke, the background in brain injuries, so specifically for these type of disorders that we're talking about, you'd want to find somebody that has experience and expertise in this area.
So Dominique, let me ask you, and I know we discussed this before, but for the people that haven't heard this before, how is your I guess your team, your home team, your family team with you and your support with your stroke? And are there people that are actually responsible enough to know what you like as a physical therapist, know what you like with medical attention, and know that you're not getting what you need to switch on to a next person? Because I think for myself, as a stroke survivor, our brains be all over the place and we don't know what is good and what is bad. And I just trust the medical professionals. But, I think if you have a great family behind you, they'll know what to do. Do you have a good family support system?
I do. I don't like. I only have my mom and my sister, and some. I don't really have many friends, but I do have my 2 carers and like my best friend. Having them there is like a really good support because they know when someone is kind of like using me or like mistreating me and that, and they can be there when something's not going right, or when they know that I'm just listening to someone when the person's probably not giving me the right advice and that. Because for me, sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll probably be listening, but I'm probably not taking really in the information, and I'll be like yeah, and then like I'll walk out and I'll just be like, what
You're listening, you're like, pancakes, strawberries.
What was that? What just happened?
I get it.
So I go to doctor's appointments and they'll be like, and these were your results, and then I come home and my mom will be like, so what were your results? And I'll be like, oh, honestly, I don't remember. I think they were good. They were good.
So Brian, that's the thing that I talked to a different specialist, occupational therapist, recreational therapist, and they basically said the same thing you saying, and I'm trying to get you guys a better way for you guys to understand that sometimes we don't know what the heck is going on, and we really appreciate our specialists that adapt to our personalities. And I see that most of you guys do that. So, the answer you gave me, yes, they know about neurologically, they know about that, they know about the PT, they know about occupational therapy, but if they can't adapt to our personality, we don't want to deal with them at all. Right. Now, do you come up with that, and how do you deal with it?
No, that's a great point. I think, you could have a clinician, a doctor, a therapist who is top of their game, knows everything, right? But if they can't get along with their patient, if they can't interact with that patient, with that client, I don't think their outcome is going to be as good. Especially with this physical therapy, patient, this is a really strong bond. I'm with my patients an hour a day, sometimes more. So being able to develop that friendship, that trust is really important. So how do I deal with that? I think building those relationships of trust, getting to know my patients, getting to know what's important to them. If they like golf, including golf into our therapy sessions.
Gotcha.
including some golf training. If they like football, we're going to be working on balance throwing a football. If they like music, I might pull in my music therapist.
Hold on. We're not talking about soccer, Dominique. We're talking about American football.
Oh, hang on. I prefer American football, okay?
Okay.
I watch
You're
it
part
on
of the
TV,
team now.
yeah.
You're part of the team. You've been Americanized. You've been Americanized. I'm sorry, Brian. Keep on.
No. So I think that's part of it. Like, just like we are here talking together, talking with my patients,
Right.
joking with them, understanding what's important to them, understanding what frustrates them.
Yes.
Sometimes we can't avoid everything that frustrates them, but learning how to kind of talk them through those moments of frustration, so that when I'm asking them to do something that they don't like or that they don't understand, I try to give them the information so that they can understand it, so that they can trust the information. But even if, my patient's not able to understand the information that I'm giving them, hopefully they can trust me enough, and that we have that good enough relationship that they're willing to push through and to try these things that maybe they don't quite understand. So I think it all comes back to just building those relationships, building that relationship of trust so that we can work together as a team.
So that brings it to two questions I have for you, Brian. First question, I know for myself, and I really appreciate your answer and your honesty. I love it, because when I had my stroke, it happened in Louisville, Kentucky. I never spent a night in Louisville, Kentucky in my life. And the first time I spent there was in a hospital. So my family was in Atlanta. So the proximity of the mileage. So I didn't see my family for a while. And there was my only support system there. They was my friends, my family, whatever. I had to spend Christmas, New Year's, almost, I think I saw the Super Bowl, it's just the playoffs. So I was there during that time, and they was talking with me, and I built that rapport. And I really appreciate that you guys don't just do your job, but you actually take on a guidance counselor type of role as well too. So I really appreciate that. But on the flip side of that, Brian, when we leave, and let's just say we have a turmoil relationship in our homes, and we're dealing with people that don't understand that we're not the same person anymore, or they don't want to deal with it because they argue with us, or whatever the situation is. How do you deal with those particular people, those case workers, not say case workers, but those caregivers? How do you deal with them so they can actually make sure that our recoveries are good?
Yeah, that's a hard step. If there are strained family relationships before an injury, most of the time they don't get better following an injury, right? They become more stressful, more strained. I personally like to include family and caregivers as much as I can in the training process. COVID life, this world we live in right now, that's definitely changed how much we're able to do that. Just like you said, when you were absent from your family for a period of time, there was a period of time where we weren't able to have families in the hospital. So patients were kind of there alone.
Right.
The patients didn't like it. I guarantee the therapists, the staff didn't like it. We really want to build those bonds, not with the patient only, but also with their families and caregivers. So yeah, back to your original question, if they have some difficulty already coming into it, it's going to be hard. And we work with our counseling team. I'm lucky enough to have some transitional support therapists that can see them in their home, help them make that transition. I know that's a luxury that doesn't always happen in other places, but trying to really get a lot of that family training up front. I think on the flip side of that is maybe a lot of, stroke survivors, a lot of patients, they might have a lower tolerance to frustration as well, right? They probably fatigue a lot quicker.
Yeah.
They maybe don't take feedback as well from their family member.
Yeah.
So, if it's a spouse telling you to do something, even though it's the exact same thing that a therapist is telling you to do, it's just received differently.
Right.
Right? Because you have history with that spouse or that parent or that whoever, you have past history that influences what they're saying. So even if they're asking you to do the same exercise as I am, as a patient, it's received differently. So what I tell all my patients is that, hey, when your wife is telling you to do these exercises, she's not your wife anymore, right? She's my therapy assistant. And so, as the caregiver and as the patient, being able to realize that you have a different hat that has to be worn now, right? You have to understand that they do want the best for me. They're nagging, but they're really trying to get me better because this is ultimately what I want. So I think looking at both sides of that picture, the caregiver and, the patient going home, and then trying to help both parties come together and understand those new roles that change that dynamic.
I'm glad you brought that up, and you brought up something really interesting. Like for me, I was very adamant that whatever my physical therapist, my occupational therapist said, it was golden because I built that rapport with them. But what you said was, that's not your spouse anymore. That is my medical assistant. For me, that would have jolted in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm not really paying attention to whoever you are, but you helping me out because you work with Brian, and I'm ready to go. So Dominique, I'm asking you, with like, for me, I know that I gave people hell. I gave people hell after my stroke. I was the most annoying person, but thank God that I had my mother. She understood what stroke survivors are like, and what kind of mentality they have. They know they have short fuses. Did you have that same type of thing?
I think at times I might have had a bit of a short fuse. For me, I don't know. I think my mom said I'm very like strong-minded, and I actually got my sister and my mom through a lot of what was happening to me. I actually got them through it more, and I was more their rock than they were mine. They always say that I was more their rock than that they were there for me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't remember myself being so snappy, but I do recall every now and again I would get pretty grumpy about being in a chair. It's just because I was very active, and I was like an athlete and a dancer and that. So, but once I realized that I could dance in the chair and that, I think that's when I started like changing my mindset. So now I was like, okay, I can dance in the chair. And then I grabbed my skateboard from under my bed and started skateboarding down the street on my butt.
Yes,
So,
she's ridiculous. Brian, she's ridiculous, man. I'm telling you, she should be in the X Games. She's ridiculous.
So once I realized I could start doing things differently and changing like my way of life and just doing things like in a chair, but just still having a life, but just on wheels. And I was just like, okay, life isn't so bad. So I even went to go see my neurologist like a year later after I had been paralyzed, and he looked at me and he was just like, this is the least disabled I have ever seen you. And it was just because I had changed my way of thinking. And it was just because I had come to terms with my disability, and I'd come to terms with accepting the fact that, yes, I'm paralyzed now and I will probably relapse again one day and end up back here, but at least I learned like what it's like being in a wheelchair and paralyzed now. So if I walk now and end up back paralyzed again one day, I know what it's like being in that position, so it won't affect me as much. So yeah, I was dancing and skateboarding and going hiking in a wheelchair. So I just changed once. I think for people, even though it's really, really difficult, and I understand how difficult it is to flip that switch and change your mindset, and I do understand that for some people, they can't really get there to actually do that. But I do believe that if you can try and get there and try and flip your mindset and at least maybe not accept your disability, or accept your new way of life, but at least try and realize that, you might have to just learn to do things a little differently, maybe just for a short term. I believe that it might just make you a little bit happier and just make you not lash out at people as much, and you might just be able to enjoy your life a little bit more, and you might not hate or dislike or just be so have so much anger towards what has happened to you, you know having a stroke or having this neurological disorder thrown at you or whatever. And I think a lot of people hold on to that for so long, and that's what could make them be more sick or be more stressed, and that which in the long term makes them more sick or makes them have more strokes or things in the in the long run. So for me, I try and keep the balance and just be happy and free.
Right. Dominique just brought up a lot of things in my head right now when she was just talking about it. And I see your brain is churning with that too. How do you deal with that? Like, I know Dominique and I probably went through different phases of our stroke recovery. Like first we was going through denial, then she's just talked about acceptance. And then maybe afterwards, like right now, she's like an advocate trying to get people to be active again. I'm doing the same thing. So how is that for you? Because I'm very curious about this. How is that for you, dealing with your treatments with your stroke survivors, knowing that they're going through these different type of phases? How does that affect you? And do you understand, and you really don't have to answer this, but I want to know the answer, that do you understand life differently from your patients, as in like how life is and how life is so precious you can't take days for granted?
I think, I don't have a perfect understanding of what my patients have gone through, right? Because I haven't gone through it myself.
Yeah.
I've worked with enough people and I've seen enough of those struggles to understand and to be able to, care through it. But I think as therapists, we do have a little different perspective, right? Because we have seen the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen people day 1 after their stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen people day 600 after their stroke,
mm-hmm.
right? Or other injury. So I think what I perceive from a lot of my patients is it's hard to see that big picture. It's hard to see the future. When you're living it, you see the struggles that are presented to you day to day. And please, Greg, Dom, correct me if I'm wrong, but my perception is that in the moment, it's so overwhelming, especially in those first few days, few weeks, few months, that, just making it through that one day is a huge accomplishment.
Right.
But as a therapist, because I can see where you are, I see where you've come from, and I have a sense of where we're going, that provides a little bit of comfort that hopefully I can give back to my patients to help them see, hey, look, you are recovering. You are making great progress, right? Look at how far you've come. I think a lot of my patients, they compare where they are today to where they were the day before the injury.
Yes.
Right? So where they are now to where they want to get to, right? Which isn't a bad thing to look at, as long as that motivates you and not discourages you. But I also ask my patients to look where you are now to one day after the injury, right? This is our goal. This is what we're working to get back to. But look at how far you've come as well, right? So being able to help give them that perspective.
So Brian and Dominique, I want you to chime in on this. What are the things that you suggest us as stroke survivors? And it seems like you're pointing to a journal, basically saying, okay, this is where you was on February 15th. Now look where you are March 15th, and things of that nature. Are you speaking on that?
I think that's a great thing. I think whether it's a written journal, whether it's a video journal, whether it's pictures, that people can reflect back on, hey, look, I am making progress, right? I am improving. I'm not there yet, but I am getting there.
And that's what I'm trying to throw to you, Dominique, because I've been watching you on Instagram. And like, Brian, I'm telling you, one day I saw her in crutches, and the other day she weren't have a wheelchair and all that. And also I see her on a motorcycle. I'm like, what the hell is going on right now? But
Oh,
that's her
Dominique,
video
you'd be fun to
journal.
work with.
Yeah, she's a ball. She's a ball. But that's what I'm saying. Dominique, is that something that you actually consciously doing for yourself, or are you just doing it for the community so they can understand that they could get back on their feet as well? What is that all about?
So for me, honestly, the whole thing was just for me, like I've never thought of myself as being like an inspiration to anyone, and I've never thought like when I started doing like my stuff on Instagram and that, it was all just for me. It was like putting my story out there just for me, and then like I realized more and more people were like interested in my story, and they were like, oh, you're really inspiring us, and like your story is really motivating me, like helping me. And I didn't realize that it was actually helping so many people. But still, even day to day now, it's not really like I like being there and helping people. And like I even have this thing that I do like on Facebook and on Instagram where I say like, if you really need my help, and if you're really, really struggling, send me 3 messages in a row and I'll get back to you, because like that's how I know you really need me.
Hold on, that's the key to get in touch with you? That's the key to get in touch with you? Because I've been messaging you on something I don't hear from you like for 2 weeks. So 3 times in a row. Got you. Got you. Okay.
3 messages in a row. Get in touch with me.
Got you. I got it now. Got it now.
But like it's just because like I'm not always online. Like I might post, but like sometimes I just need like my therapist has always told me that I've always focused on helping so many other people, but like I need to always like make some time for myself. But like the posts are always like there, and I always put them out there, but like they're there for like me to share my story for myself. But lately, like and recently, I still post them now because I've realized they help people. But like when I share the motorbike stuff and that, like I'm just like, that's for me, and like take me out of my bike. But
I hear you.
But like when I do share like the facts that I relapse and that, I want people to realize like that is an honest thing. Like this can happen, and like when I got injured the other day at training, like at the moment I'm still like struggling with my walking and stuff, and but like it's those sort of things, like it can happen, and I want people to realize that these sort of things can happen. So when I share that sort of stuff, I do want people to just realize that they need to be careful, and they do need to realize that every day they need to go out there and live their lives and be really happy, and just make the most out of their life. But at the same time, just be careful as well, because some things can happen. Like for me, a week ago I had my hemiplegic migraine and I had a setback, and then last week I ended up with a really bad back injury. So for me, I've just been having a few little setbacks along the way. So but for me, I do like sharing my story mainly for myself. It's just my little journal, but I didn't realize at the time it was helping so many people at the same time. So I like saying to my mom, I don't call myself an inspiration, because like I don't see myself as one. Right. I just see myself as being myself. I just see myself as being me. I'm just trying to be me. That's all I am. I'm just trying to be me.
I'm trying to get back on my feet. I get that.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the time, but I feel the same exact way as you, Dominique. Like I started doing these interviews, and I don't really care about the fame or anything like that. I just know that people need this stuff, and this is a talent that I had before I had my stroke. So it's therapeutic for me to get back to where I am, but it's also inspiration for other people, and I get that. That's what I like. Now, Brian, just hearing this story that you had from Dominique and myself, does that excite you as, how we are trying to get back on our feet? Are we like the patient that you want to bring into other patients so they can be motivated as well? These are things that makes your day easier. Like, speak on that.
Absolutely. I think, you guys are doing a great job getting out there, letting people see their potential. I would imagine that there were times at the beginning where both of you never imagined that you'd be, running this talk show, riding a motorcycle,
Right.
right? There were probably times where you were really discouraged and didn't know what was next. So absolutely, for my patients to hear it from people who have been through it and truly understand, and can give them that hope, I think that is worth a lot. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, sir. So as we close out, I wanted to give you guys a couple of minutes to just talk about whatever you want to talk about. If like for you, Brian, if you have any information or websites you want people to look at to help them out, especially during this time of COVID, if they want to get some exercises and things like that. And Dominique, if anything that you want to talk about your journey, also if you have some kind of advocacy that you're dealing with that you want to put out there, feel free to do it. But Brian, I'm gonna allow you to go first, and then Dominique, you will close out for us.
All right. So I guess my thoughts for people going through this is stay hopeful. Like Dominique mentioned, find that positive attitude. Once you can kind of find that hope and find that strength within, it's going to make such a big difference. I tell people that I see miracles every day. And sometimes that miracle is seeing somebody take that first step. And sometimes that miracle is seeing somebody who will probably never take that first step, still keep that hope, still keep that energy and that joy in their life, find ways to adapt things that they enjoy. And I think sometimes that's the bigger miracle, actually. And it's not easy. But if you have that team of therapists, if you have that family support, if you have friends, if you have yourself to lift yourself up and get through those times, find those things that'll get you through it. There is wonderful life to live after an injury.
It is.
There is
Absolutely.
wonderful life to live, no matter what that is. It will be different than before the injury, most likely. But enjoy the process of finding yourself again and moving forward.
I thank you for those words, because we really need to hear that. And for people that did not have a stroke or had some brain trauma, to actually tell us that instead of saying just get back on your feet, you should be able to do it. We really appreciate you saying that to us. Thank you, sir. Dominique.
Well, for me, I just want people to realize that, every stroke patient or just anyone with a neurological disorder, we are all different, and people just need to take that into account. I also want people to, for me personally, this is a big one. I would like people to just stop staring at us. We're not something to stare at, just because we might be in a chair, we might walk with a walking stick, we might be walking with crutches, or we might look different. We're not something for you to stare at, all right? And if you do stare, please smile, because when you stare at us, it is actually something really hurtful, and it doesn't make us feel comfortable, and it gives us the biggest amount of anxiety. And I just want people to realize that, because it actually is really hard for a lot of us to actually come out of the house in the first place. That's actually a massive step for a lot of us to actually take that big step and actually getting out of the house. And I don't know if I'm speaking for like all of us, but I know that was like a big step for me to actually take that step on getting out of the house, because it just was such a discomfort for me to, first accept my new look or my new way of life. And so when I had to make that new way of life and new appearance outside of like in the whole wide world, I just had so many looks. And even now, just walking with crutches, I still get the looks. And I just want people to realize that it's not very nice. And I just would like people to just be able to smile at us if they do it, because it is very hurtful. And you know, for the other people who are struggling with neurological disorders or you know, stroke recovery and that, I just want you to know you can do it. You can get there. You know, we are all strong. We all have it in us. All right. If you're having a bad day, have your bad day. All right. We are all entitled to a bad day. And I don't want you to feel like you're not entitled to it, because if your mom or dad or brother and sister can have a cranky day and they don't have a neurological problem and they're not recovering from a stroke, then you're allowed one too. All right. So if they're pointing fingers at you and saying, why are you having a bad day? Just remind them that if they're having one, then so are you allowed to have one. All right. And I just want everyone to know that you are just amazing. All right. Because you're recovering from something extraordinarily difficult, and it's a huge milestone. And go out there and live your life. You can, if you open up your eyes, you can realize just how much you can do. If you're in a wheelchair, try hiking. It's amazing. Interesting, but amazing. Get on a skateboard, sit your butt on a skateboard and go riding down the street. You'll see what.
No, don't do it. Don't do that.
Wear a helmet.
All I'm saying
Wear a
is,
helmet, please.
wear a helmet. But all I'm saying is live your life, because you have a life to live, and just go out there and have the most amazing life, even if it's not the one you were expecting to have. All right. So yeah.
Dominique, thank you so much. As always, you always have the right words to say. I really appreciate you. Guys, this has been Connecting the Dots, episode 5. We talked with Brian and also Dominique on physical therapy. But as you can see, we don't really just talk about physical therapy itself. It's a relationship. You can see that we try to build a bond. And these are the things that we miss as stroke survivors. I don't know how you feel when we leave, Brian, but when we leave, we feel very, very down, because you guys become new parts of our lives. You guys become like our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, our mothers, our aunties and uncles, things of that nature. So we really love you guys so much. So that's why this series is all about, because we want to make sure that we connect back with you guys. So I really appreciate you, Brian, for taking your time out of your busy day.
My pleasure.
Dominique, I know it's still morning for you, so I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Early morning.
Love you guys. Peace.
Nice to meet you, Brian.
Thanks, Greg. Nice to meet you, Dominique.